Um, okay, so welcome to Between Two Cones. And today, in this episode, Marc Luiken joins us, and he's going to be sharing his extremely successful strategy for transforming meetings from barely tolerated work obligations into truly dynamic and meaningful experiences, places where people want to be invited back. And meetings we know can make or break teams. They can destroy leaders, projects, and they can have a serious impact on morale. So, a seasoned leader and a former transportation executive, Marc shows us how he has inspired and changed the lives of people who work with him and for him. And this is a conversation not only about meetings, it's also a conversation about integrity, innovation, respect, and empowerment for the real people behind the cones. So, welcome to Marc. True confession, I worked for Marc when I worked at the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. Marc was the commissioner at that time. Prior to working at the DOT, what I know of his history is he was with the United States Air Force, where he had a distinguished career. And after his time with the Alaska DOT, Marc has moved on to Michael Baker International, where he directs business development. So a very widespread and vast amount of experience for Marc's career. So lots to learn from you today, and I can't wait for it, Marc. From a personal side of things, Marc is one of the leaders that when people say in classes, who do you think of as a leader that you would like to role model? Marc was my leader. He is the individual who single-handedly had the most impact on my leadership style and on my belief and confidence in being able to lead others. So it's a real honor to have you here, and appreciate hearing more from you, and that you're willing to share some more wisdom today.
Well, thank you, Amanda. It's really very kind of you, in that introduction. And so I appreciate you inviting me to be part of this. It's very exciting. I know it's somewhat new, and I'm fairly new to podcasts myself, but it is really a joy to be here today. And just like you said, share my experience as a leader, but also how we develop this set of rules. And that's really what we're going to talk about today a little bit, is rules for running a meeting, right? How do we make a meeting which oftentimes are can seem like drudgery, can seem like a waste of time? How do we make it effective? How do we make it valuable for the people participating, but also, as you said, to bring a team together to make it as effective and efficient and productive as a team can be? And so it really relates to, as you said, how we respect one another, we respect one another's time, as well as their participation, right, and the contribution that they bring. And so that's really what I want to talk about. We developed this. I got to develop this with several people that were on our executive team at the time, but one of those people is someone that I worked with since 1990 in the Air Force, and that was Steve Hatter, another incredible leader that I got to work for, but that also I was able to bring on and have him work for me at times as well. But from our experience in the Air Force, we brought these rules, if you will, together, and so. Let's just, we'll just run down if you want, and we'll just kind of go through what each of these rules are, and then also what they mean. So the first one should be pretty obvious, but sometimes it's not. And I've certainly experienced this, and that is start on time. And then whatever time you committed for that meeting, only use that amount of time, right? If it's a 30-minute meeting, start on time and you're done in 30 minutes, right? So it requires you to be efficient, have an agenda, and then stick with that agenda as best you can. But again, it shows you respect, the time that your team has carved out for your meeting, but you also respect that they have a lot of other stuff to do, and so you're not going to hold them over if you don't have to.
Yeah, I just gotta say, I really like that one because when meetings run over, it usually runs into my potty break time. And if you take my potty break time, then by the time the next meeting's going on, I can't pay attention.
Roger. Well, as an old guy, I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I
No.
wanted to underscore the importance of that one.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Well, that's great. Well, the second one is one that ranks and titles are left outside the door. So this really does come from our time, both Steve and my time as fighter pilots in the Air Force. And there are two things that go around that bracket a flight, right? So, you've got, everybody thinks you just go jump in an airplane and off you go and you do your thing and you come back. Well, there's a briefing time, and that's usually about a 2-hour event. And then there's a debriefing time, and that can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 4 hours or more, right? It just depends on how the flight went. But the point is, when you walk in that room, and I'll tell you, this was where number one came from. If you are 1 second late, the door is closed, you're not part of that team anymore, right? So that was the first thing we learned very quickly was you be on time, be early ultimately. But secondly, once that door closed, whatever the size of of your flight was, whether it's 2 people or 8 people, you are now a team, and that team has a particular mission, and the mission is the most important thing. So everybody contributes, and there are no ranks. You could have a 2-star general and a second lieutenant, well, a first lieutenant briefing the flight. Didn't matter. Everybody is part of that team at that point once the door closes. And so that is the only way that you really, I think, can accomplish what needs to be done for the mission. But it also then encourages, and we'll get to this, but it encourages people to participate because now they know we're all part of the team and everybody's input matters. Mm-hmm. So again, there are ways that you can, as the leader, can show that. One of those ways that I tried to do is I would sit in the middle of the table. I wouldn't sit at the end of the table. Oftentimes, if I could, I would sit, just as one of the folks on the team, right? So that's a physical way to show it. But most importantly, we want to make sure everybody knows when they show up for that meeting, and they're now part of the team and their input matters.
That's a really cool way of thinking, like sitting in the middle of the table. I read this book once. It's actually really good. It's The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. Mm-hmm. And it talks about when you have meetings, the layout of the room and the way that, people come into the room and the impact that has on the success of the meeting as a whole, and sitting at the middle of the table and level setting with everybody in that way. I think that's it.
Yeah, think about the Knights of the Round Table, right? Why was that table round? Right?
Yep.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to this idea of servant leadership. Truly serving people is to, make sure that they understand they are important, their input is important, and you value it. Number 3 is really kind of just a follow on of number 2, and that is we are a team. Everyone speaks, but in one conversation. So again, everybody's input is valuable. There are no dumb questions. There are no dumb statements, especially in a brainstorming session, right? We want everything. We want everything to come in. But again, we don't belittle a person. We might, laugh about a particular, humorous idea possibly, right? But we're not targeting people, right? In the way that we act. And then I just said this again, but this is really rule number 4, no questions off limits. No idea is dumb. Again, we want your input, and that's just how we communicate that and make sure people understand when you come, we want your best thinking. And so if there's a question, let's ask it, right? Because it may be something that other people are thinking about. But if you don't ask, we may miss an opportunity, right? And really, it encourages great idea development, if you will. So that's where that came from. Again, I've already alluded to this, but we respect who's speaking. All right, and this kind of goes back to what are we bringing to the meeting? If you're bringing your phone, bringing your computer, unless of course we've already cleared that. But if you're sitting there on your phone while someone's speaking, that's definitely not communicating respect, right? And so we're all leaning in. We are all part of the conversation because, again, we want to get the most out of this meeting. And oftentimes we only have 30 minutes. And so, if you're not paying attention, you're doing something else, you're really not helping the team. And then, just rolls right into the number 6, and that is to be physically and mentally present. Part of that's maybe preparation prior to the meeting, right? What's your part? Where are you on the agenda? You're ready to speak. You're ready to provide your input when you're called on. But most importantly, you're not distracted, right? You're not talking on your phone or looking at your phone. If you have your computer there, you're not doing emails, right? Your computer's there to support whatever it is you're bringing to the meeting. So again, goes back to this idea of respect not just for other individuals, but really for the team and the mission. What are you trying to get done? Mm-hmm. And then on to number 7, ELMO. Any ideas on ELMO?
ELMO is my favorite.
I had never heard of it before. I'll be honest. I saw your list, and so I saw, and I had never heard the term ELMO before, but I love it. Like, I think it's enough. Let's move on.
Exactly. Right. And we've all been there, right? Where we just kind of are going around and around and around a topic, and we can't seem to come to a decision or a conclusion. So anybody can call it, right? And usually it wasn't me, right? I'm in the middle of it. I'm trying to solve the issue, and somebody finally will go, ELMO, right? We got to stop, right? We've only got so much time. We'll come back to it, and we'll put it in the parking lot, right? And let's put it on the agenda for next time. Gives us a little bit of time to maybe do some additional research, find some more data. But let's not belabor something to the point where we become ineffective. And that's right on number 8, right? Use that parking lot, right? If we can't get to a decision, we don't have enough information. Let's put it in the parking lot and bring it back for the next meeting. This one's a little tough, and certainly one that I used to struggle with, maybe not so much anymore, but this idea of conflict, right? We're not all going to see eye to eye. We're not, because we all come from different places. We all have, we may have a pretty diverse group, right, with a very different perspectives. So there's going to be conflict, but let's not avoid it, right? It's healthy if it's done in the right way. And really what this gets to is this idea of trust, right? And really that's a theme that should have been, maybe I should have talked about it at the beginning, but you aren't going to be an effective team if you don't trust each other, right? And so this is part of engendering that trust, is being able to deal with conflict in your meetings. Now, the really important part is once the meeting is over, we didn't resolve that conflict completely, but once the meeting is over, the door opens. We're all still a team. We're all still friends, right? We are all still part of working toward whatever the mission is, whatever the goal is. And so we don't take it outside the meeting, right? Again, that's part of that trust piece, right? We're not going to go and talk to some other colleague maybe that wasn't in the meeting and say, well, you should have heard what Trish said, right? Again, you aren't going to be effective if trust isn't present. And
That was
so that's
part of your number three, right? We're a team, everyone speaks, but in one conversation. We didn't
mhm.
really talk about the in one conversation piece, but it seems like this is kind of what you're getting at with that, right?
Yep, yep. Yeah, we are here to solve an issue, make a decision, maybe move a project forward. But again, the door is closed. It's really, all those issues are for the people in that meeting, right? And once, when it's time to report out, we are also in agreement as to what that conclusion or what that decision is. One of the things I used to say, because I would be in meetings maybe with my boss, and I'd have a but sir, you get one but sir, and he may or may not decide that that's a good idea, and when the meeting's over, and I walk out of that meeting, whatever the decision was, that was the best decision I ever had, right? I'm no longer questioning it. We're going in that direction. And again, that's where, that's where trust comes in, loyalty to a certain extent. But we can't be out sniping, if you will, outside of our meetings, because we didn't agree with, a particular decision or a particular conversation.
Mhm.
And then finally, the last part, and this is where we really tried to encourage people who were less apt to speak up, to take a stand, right? If you truly believe in whatever it is, the issue is that you want to bring up, or maybe you don't agree with the rest of the team, okay, speak up, right? Don't go along to get along. I mean, and I'll tell you, Amanda was very good at this, uh, and I truly appreciated it because she saw things differently than I did, and I was so glad that she did, because I might have taken us down a road that we really shouldn't have gone, and so she was not afraid to step in and take a stand and say, "Well, have you thought about this?" Right, and oftentimes, it was a much better approach than maybe even the whole team was headed down. Right, so again, that's number 10, but we're not going to be as good of a team, and we're not going to get to the best solution if people stay quiet. And so those are my 10 rules, and they're not mine. Those are just, what we came up with. But I think they make teams stronger. They also make meetings enjoyable because people know when they show up, it's not going to be a meeting because it's on the schedule. It's a meeting that is actually we're going to actually get something done.
Mhm.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love that story. And one of the things that I really appreciated about our meetings is that um, they had a purpose. I mean, we knew what to expect from the agenda. We knew what was expected of us going in. And to me, the meetings became an action. So instead of, a lot of times meetings are, well, we're going to have a meeting and everybody has to hear what's going on and we're going to share some information, and then people have to go away and have the meeting after the meeting before they actually decide something. And that rarely happened. Those, it happened in the meeting. And so you didn't want to miss the meeting because something was going to happen at the meeting. And I think that really, in terms of that trust piece, that reinforced the trust, right? Because we really did leave rank outside the door. And we were there to find resolutions and to address the issues of the day or the year, whatever it might be. And while we were doing that, if one of us had to be gone or we missed it, we knew the rest of the team was working on this item. And so for me anyway, it made it a lot easier to recognize that outside of the meetings, I still could trust folks to come in and have my back, or um, continue to build that team outside of the meetings. But I think the meetings definitely set the stage for the team to be built. And I will say that the executive team that Marc led at the DOT was the strongest and most cohesive executive team that I've ever seen in a DOT. Even with all the DOTs I've worked with since then, it was a really tight team, and we got a lot done for the for the resources we had and the different challenges we were facing. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Marc, I would
And,
love to know going in, right? So you established this team that had these incredible meetings. You came in with these rules that every leader should know, but they don't all, right? What how was it setting up this culture? Did you have difficulty getting people to buy into this change? I mean, some people are very tied to not even the people at the top, but the hierarchical structure. Sometimes people in the middle and lower levels are tied to those roles also. So I would just like to know a little bit about how you either did or would recommend someone else or a new leader coming in to a team or getting promoted or yeah.
yeah. Oh, no, that's great. And I'll start it with an anecdote of using this same process in a project that I'm working on right now. We have the DOT wanted to have a stakeholder working group, pretty robust stakeholder working group, come in and basically inform the design team as they work through the preliminary design. And so I got to lead that, or at least facilitate that group. And so I brought these rules. Now, what I learned is, there are different levels of experience and willingness to participate, right? In the military, you just come in and go, okay, here's the rules, and everybody's like, yes, sir, right? There's no discussion, right? And at DOT, it was, here's some rules, let's talk about it and see, how people feel about it, and maybe we even adapt them a bit, right, based on input from other team members. In the private sector, it's, here's some rules. What do you think, right? And we had to throw some out. We had to maybe reword them a little bit because we didn't want people to just turn around and walk away, right? We want them to be part of the team ultimately that helped us with our project. So that's just a big picture of kind of how you have to handle, using these rules depending on your audience or your team, right? For us at DOT, like I said, I think the first time we rolled these out, there was a lot of, oh boy, how's this going to work, right? And there was some skepticism. And what was great was we used that opportunity to, say, okay, what do we think? Because this final list isn't necessarily the first list we started with, right? And it was probably more a little bit on the military side, right? And we're going to do this, right? So we got that. That's right. So we got that input from the team, and then those rules evolved over time. But really, what more importantly, what evolved over time was why? Why do we have this rule, right? What is it that is driving this one to be included, right? And it was really more that background as to why we wanted to have that rule. And it really, again, it came down to trust, came down to respect, and it came down to how we valued one another. And so so that was really the process. And then we did have turnover, right? So we'd have somebody who left the department. Or maybe somebody got promoted up, or maybe we decided, what, we need to include this other person from this other department or section in this team. And so we'd bring him in, and we reviewed the rules every time, right? Every meeting we review the rules, and that would then allow those new people to be included and go, oh, okay, this is how this meeting goes, right? And this is what's expected of me. And usually it was depending on the personality, but they just sit and watch, right? They would listen and they would observe, And by meeting 2 or 3, they were all in, right? And they're part of the team. So
Like,
that was really kind
you
of how
set the
that process.
rules, but you
What's
don't
that?
know if people are actually going to believe that they're real until you're modeling it, right? Because, like, if you tell
Absolutely.
me that we can actually speak our minds here, but you
Mhm.
don't mean it, and I try to speak my mind, then what's going to happen?
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So you get to observe Amanda, going, wait a minute, have you thought about this? And the response she gets is really telling, right?
yeah.
And it's going to tell you whether or not it's safe or not to bring up, maybe something that might be controversial.
And what I remember from some of the meetings is, to me, the hardest rule to really get accepted by the team was the ELMO.
Hmm.
The ELMO rule, because people thought, oh, we're not going to tell someone, okay, that's enough. Stop talking. Let's go somewhere else. Nobody really believed in it. And it took a few meetings before somebody actually used it. I don't remember who it was, but I remember almost sheepishly, they're like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm calling
Right.
Elmo.
Right.
And all of us were kind of in shock for a minute of, oh, someone actually said Elmo. And then it's like we overused Elmo because we really liked it.
I'm done with this
Say,
topic. Let's move on. Yep.
That's right.
is there a limit to how long, like, let's say we just can't agree on something and we've Elmoed it and it went to the parking lot, and then the next meeting we still can't agree on it? Or is there a limit to how many times something can be parked or Elmoed, or it didn't end up being a problem because you had time to think about it between meetings and maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, there was a couple where it was like, yeah, we got to do more work, right? But I don't think we ever got to a point where it was just we don't want to deal with this anymore, right? We just keep putting it off. I don't know, Amanda, can you think of anything like that?
Gosh, no, as I'm thinking back, I think for the most part, when we actually said it's time to Elmo something, I felt like people took a minute to go, oh, wait a minute, why are we really going on and on about this? And what is the issue really? And sometimes it was okay, you're right. That's a pet peeve, and we just had to let it go. But other times it started a different conversation about, why are we going
Mm-hmm.
on and on about this?
Yeah,
And we kind of
right.
went away from symptoms and started talking about what's the root cause behind,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
narrative.
Right. What's the real issue, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So I don't think I don't remember an Elmo ever really resurfacing more than maybe once or
Mhm.
twice.
Yeah.
The other Elmo question I have is not necessarily topics, but there are specific people that I can think of that I feel like I would Elmo a lot. Did you have repeat Elmo offenders?
I'm thinking about, I mean, what I remember is we had people who felt really strongly about certain topics, and any opportunity they had, they took to talk about it. When Mark came in and started implementing these rules, after probably 5 or 6 regular executive team meetings, I didn't have to have the pre-meetings anymore, because I could just come to the meeting with the idea and people would actually listen to it. And then we'd figure out if it was something we wanted to do or not. But before that, there was hours of time spent just trying to get people to say, okay, we'll let you talk at the meeting, right? Even if you were on the agenda. So I think there was a lot of efficiency from the meetings that maybe isn't really obvious until you started using the rules. So I've got some questions for you that are a little bit off the target. So looking at where we are today, I don't know if you've encountered it, or how you're dealing with it, but how do you use these rules with virtual meetings, right? So the pandemic hit and now we're all remote, or some of us are remote and we're not always in person. Have you noticed any need to modify this, or has it changed its effectiveness with the increase in virtual meetings?
Well, I think, virtual meetings are really tough. And I got to tell you, I'm probably one of the worst offenders, right? When it comes to being present because, it is just so easy to be in this meeting and have my email or whatever it is I'm working on over here, right? And I can even turn my camera off so you can't see me, working on something else, right? So yeah, the virtual meeting space has made it really difficult. And I think this is where you have to get that commitment, right, from your team to say, we're going to be present. We are going to be focused on this meeting only. And that may be a modification of that rule, right? That not only are we physically present, we can't be physically present, but we are certainly mentally present, and we are physically present on the screen, right? Because otherwise, it's so tempting to be distracted, and so. And again, it goes back to, that respect thing, right? Do I respect all these other people who are committing their time to be on this meeting? And, again, I'm the worst of sinners, right? When it comes to that. So, it's a good reminder for me, right? To be committed to, whatever the meeting is that I'm participating on virtually.
Well, and I've heard some real horror stories about, people not having their cameras on because they're working out or, doing all these other things and getting caught out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe that's another rule, right? Maybe that's another rule. We're all going to have our cameras on, right? You don't get that choice. I don't know. Maybe it's something to consider.
I'll be honest, sometimes I do have my little weights at my desk and I'll be sitting in a meeting and going like this. Because if you sit there too long, yeah. So, if everyone wants to see me doing that, no.
Right.
Also, what's your policy on snacking during meetings?
Well, again, we used to have lunch, right? We'd have lunch brought in, right? So, I don't have a problem. Just don't talk with your mouth full. But
no. We're human. I just,
Yeah, absolutely.
And you never know, like, to be perfectly honest, I am diabetic and sometimes I have to have snacks near me because if my sugar gets low in the meeting, I can't pay attention.
Right. You're not going to be that, performing, right?
Right.
And,
yeah.
I totally get it. Well, and Amanda's given up her lunch break for this, right? So I'm surprised she didn't bring lunch with her.
Right.
So true confession, I scarfed a protein bar before we started. But I think you can learn a lot about people from watching them eat, sharing a meal with somebody. You can figure out a lot. And so there's something to that, something for that.
Yeah.
All right. So,
okay. But I agree. I think that they're, in the virtual space, we may have to modify these a bit, right? Just to make sure that, again, I want to make sure that a meeting is valuable, right? That we're just not meeting because, that's what we've always done, right? Let's use the meeting to accomplish something.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I remember, and still to this day, I do it now where every meeting at the end of the meeting, we go through the action items that came up during the meeting, and they each have a description of the task and who owns it and what the timeline is. And that is huge in terms of getting things done and, contributing and adding value to a meeting, I think. And I kind of feel like I'm missing something if I go to a meeting and they don't have that at the end where we say, okay, here's what we decided and here are the action items and who's in charge of it. Okay, so how about AI? Are you going to invite AI into your meetings?
I don't necessarily, or I didn't used to, I guess I say it that way, right? But man, I'll tell you what, now that, and again, I go back to my stakeholder working group, I'm also responsible for minutes, right? Oh my gosh, AI, thank you very much, right? Recording everything that's getting said, but then I can go, okay, give me the summary, right? And it'll do that for me too. So I find that hugely valuable, especially if you need to have minutes for your meeting, which in most cases we do, right? And so I think that there's there's value in using AI.
And
That's my opinion, my thoughts, right?
what do you think, Trish? Do you think AI should be in meetings?
Oh, I love when I can use it for meeting notes, like he said. Like I could take regular meeting notes, but boy, does it take some of my brain power away from participating in the meeting. Whereas if I have, the transcription going and then can generate meeting notes at the end, I'm able to be more fully present and not have to backtrack as far as, okay, what did you say again? So that I can make sure I write that down correctly.
Yep.
Even back to our work on the subcommittee together, which speaking of, I know you used a lot of the things that you learned from Mark now on how we got things done with our action items and our ownership of tasks and things like that. So I see what you did there. But also, like, I would try to take notes during those meetings, and I was always going, okay, somebody's got to help me because it's hard to follow a flowing conversation between multiple people while taking notes and get all of the important points and be a participant. You got to choose one or the other from me,
Yeah, well, and then back in the old days, I mean, that's what we had one person in the meeting that's what their assignment was, right? You're just taking notes and you're writing down action items so that at the end we can ask you, okay, what do we commit to, right? Now we have an entity that can do that for us, and like you said, and this is exactly where my mind went, because again, 2 years ago I was writing notes, right, and it's hard to keep up, and so now I can actually be much more present, a much better facilitator if that's my role, because somebody, something else is taking the notes for me. Then I can pull them down at the end.
And one of the things that I'm starting to see in meetings is people will ask a question like, oh, what's a good word? Or how do we want to frame that? And somebody will pipe up with, well, AI says we could, for generative AI, they're like Chat says, or Claude or Perplexity or whoever they're using, Copilot, says we could say it this way or this way. So I'm starting to see people bring AI into the discussion. Have you had any experience with that? Are you seeing that at all?
Not yet. No, I haven't seen that. I'm using it, for certain writing tasks, to help me, put some initial thoughts on paper, whatever. But I haven't seen it used in meetings yet. But I can see as long as it's not pulling you away, right? As long as it's not distracting you to the point where you're just, you're putting all this, input into, ChatGPT to get something out, and you've missed 10 minutes of conversation.
Right. I've seen it a lot in like naming training events, right? Like coming up with clever names that pull people in. One of the staff members that worked on our HR Christmas party for this year used it to write some really great emails to send out to invite people that really drew them in and gave them the team feeling, like told a whole story about the elves kidnapping Santa, and it was hysterical. He said, yeah, I used AI to generate all of that, but it really got people excited to come to the event, which we had some struggle with in the past of, it's a not necessarily a party, but yeah.
You want participation.
Right. Yeah. So we saw increased participation by using AI to write those stories. We had one group too that did their end of the year like recap of what they had done. And they had taken their list of things they had done and put it into some sort of AI and built it into a story that they then like told like they were reading a storybook. And it was the most clever presentation. We were all riveted with what they'd done for the year. And I just thought, well, that's cool. Talk about some novel uses of AI. We all know what you did last year now and cared about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, we're in performance review, time, right? And I hear a lot of bosses now are using AI to help write their performance reviews, right? At least get some stuff down on paper. Usually that's my biggest struggle is just creating something. I'm great at editing, And so if I could get use some tool to help me create some words, then I can edit those.
Yep.
So where my brain goes with this is, I mean, I think AI can be incorporated into the meeting rules pretty easily and contribute to it. And then, we talked about remote and hybrid and virtual meetings and everything. So here's my next question. What do you see as the future of meetings? Are we going to keep having meetings? Are they going to continue to be a great opportunity to build teams? Are they going to slowly be phased out? I mean, if you had to predict, what would you say?
Wow. Well, I mean, I think we need human interaction, right? We need to be able to interact with one another. We need to be able to encourage one another. And so, if Marc Luiken had his way, yeah, we would keep meeting, right? Now, how much time do I need to meet, right? And so that's maybe the thing to look at is, do I need a full hour when I can get it done in 30 minutes, right? But I really believe if we are using the rules, we're using an agenda, knowing that we're going to have some action items at the end, I think we're going to need to keep meeting.
I hope so. I think there's definitely a lot of power in meetings that can really help build teams and get things done.
Yep, I agree. Yeah.
I think they'll change the way they look. I mean, just like if you look at the different generations and the generations that would prefer to pick up the phone versus those that get anxiety when someone calls them directly versus texts or messages or whatever, the way the younger generations coming into the workforce view face-to-face meetings is going to change things. I do think with AI and with these agendas and meeting notes and things like that, we'll be able to be just as productive with shorter meetings. But there is something about that creativity that comes out of sitting in a room together, collaborating across teams or within a team, things that come up that you wouldn't have necessarily, and AI can't think about. Like there's a magic that comes to coming together, right?
I agree. Yeah.
So I definitely think we'll still meeting, but I do think what it looks like, we probably can't even comprehend right now, right?
Sure.
Right. Somebody ask a Gen Alpha.
Yeah, depending on where you work, I mean, there's loads of people that are still working at home, right? And so there's always going to be hybrid.
Well, and I think that the rules that you shared with us allow that to happen. I don't think changing up the nature of the meeting environment would negate any of these rules. In fact, some of them I think become even more critical to let people be heard and to let them share their ideas and for the team to move forward, in one conversation, because I think that is really critical. And I'm excited to kind of see where we go. And we would love to share your rules with anyone who's listening. So with your permission, we'll make sure that we share the 1 through 10 so people know what the 10 rules are. So, real quick, Marc, really, when I first started working with you, for me, you were one of the strongest servant leaders I'd ever seen in terms of just consistently putting the team forward, paying attention to the mission, helping us all kind of bring our best selves, not only to work, but to the people that we were interacting with as well. So it was about people as much as it was about work. And I think that the meeting rules that you shared with us reinforced your servant leadership. If you had to choose another tool, is there any other tool? So like you said, okay, you want to be a servant leader, here's one tool, the rules for meetings. Is there one other tool that you'd say you need at least these two tools in your toolbox? I'm gonna put you on the spot just a little bit and say, is there a pair of tools that we need?
Um, boy, I'm not very good at original thought. I usually have to borrow it from somebody, but I think, realistically, I think just, recognizing that, when you come to work every day, that it's not about you, right? Um, it's either about, the mission or the people that are getting the mission done. And I think the second part is the most important, right? How am I helping these people who've committed to this organization to, like you say, bring the best that they are every day? And I guess maybe the thing that I always looked at was, do they have the tools? Do they have the time? And do they have the response or authority, if you will, right, to do what we are asking them to do?
Any final words or last things that you want to share before we move on to our coin toss?
No, I really appreciate you guys asking me to be part of this, and in the early days of the podcast, and I hope that for anybody that wants to use these rules or see these rules, that they can uh, implement them in a way that really makes their organization that much better.
We're honored to have you here, really. Like I was telling you before the whole thing, anyone who Amanda respects the way that she respects you, to me, that just puts you on another level of awesome leader, right? Because to me, she's the cream of the crop. So for her to have as much respect for you as she does, you're doing something right, Also, people leave bad bosses, not jobs.
Right.
And the way that you have really created this culture of inclusivity of thought and inclusivity of people and what they're doing. I mean, I just think it's really awesome to see it in these rules. Really awesome to talk to you and hear, about all of this stuff and really your perspective. It's great.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. No, I really enjoyed spending time with you guys.
We are pretty fun.
And don't be surprised. We may say, "Hey, Mark, you want to come back and talk about another topic here one of these days?"
Right.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
So as we move on to the coin toss, what we're doing with the coin toss is we have our coin, and we have one question if it's heads and one question if it's tails. So I throw it up in the air and it lands, and it's heads. So the heads question is,
I think that coin might be heavier on the head side than the tails. I feel like we could
ask Mark both. We could just ask him both. There we go. Okay, so the heads, I'll have to flip
decide.
it.
Yeah, which one was better. Yeah.
I'll mail it down to you, Trish, and you can flip it for a while. Okay, what's the best life lesson you've ever learned?
Oh my. Oh yeah, I should have thought about this a long I think probably best life lesson. I won't get specific, but you've got to bring integrity every day. Again, that's who you are, right? And if you compromise that, it's really destructive, and especially as a leader. And so, yeah, that has to be who you are and what you bring every day. You can't compromise.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Okay, well, just in case, we'll ask you the tails question too. You can decide if you want to answer it or not. What was your first big ambition?
Oh, well, I guess probably in high school, I had decided I wanted to be an architect, and managed to get the school to adapt my curriculum so that I could actually focus on that type of training even before I got to college. But obviously that didn't pan out, and decided to go be a pilot in the Air Force instead.
Oh, that's pretty fun. As my daughter's in school to be an architect. So
That
when
is
you said
awesome.
architect, ooh.
Well, and I get to work with these guys, a couple of architects right here in my office, and see what that world really would have been like.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
Thank
the
you.
final piece of our episode is our transportation in the wild. And so in transportation in the wild, we want to share a concept with you, and we have a picture too, and get your thoughts on it and see if you can think of, first your reaction. What do you think about this idea? And then second, any ideas you have that spring from this. So knowing that you have a bit of an aviation background, tell us what you think about hybrid electric aviation and its potential future.
Well, it's really fascinating. I just watched a short kind of promotional video this weekend on the flying car. And I think that is that could very likely really be something in the not too distant future. And and this particular model is it's semi-autonomous. The person who is driving actually has a stick, and they point the stick where they want to go, and then the vehicle goes there. And they've already built in a geofence, so you're going to avoid obstacles, and obviously eventually avoid other flying cars, right? So this is a technology that's moving pretty fast, and this particular company is, I think they're unveiling their what do they call it, showroom model before the end of the month. And they're actually they were designed and being manufactured down in Miami is where this is starting. But the point being is, I think that there is an application for this right now. It's going to really just like electric vehicles, electric cars on the road have begun to transform our system, our transportation system. Because now we have charging stations instead of fuel stations. This will also, it's going to transform airports, right? I have to now have a charging station for my electric aircraft, and I have to be able to power that, right? So all that infrastructure behind that is going to change, and do I think that it's going to replace fueled aircraft, aviation fueled aircraft? Probably not. Maybe not right away. Maybe not for 50 years. But I definitely think there's an application for it, right? And you already described it. These shorter haul type of routes, right? There's a term called advanced air mobility. I don't know if you've heard of that term, but that is what's being talked about in the aviation industry. And really, what it deals with is moving people from, at least in some cases, moving people from a metro center out to the airport. And I can think of the one that I think of most. That most applicable to this would be Denver, right? I mean, it's a 30-mile drive just about to get from the city center out to the airport. Mm-hmm. Well, now they're talking about loading you up in an air vehicle and taking you to the airport via that. Again, either fully autonomous or semi-autonomous, right? Again, technology's there. You can show up just like a Waymo, jump in the vehicle, and it will take you out there. And you don't necessarily need a person flying it, right? So, yes, there is application, and it's certainly it is moving forward. There are electric aircraft. I don't necessarily believe they are in service yet, but they are certainly being experimented with. And so, yeah, we're not far away.
Talk about a UAP, right? Unidentified aerial phenomena or whatever.
Yeah. You may all of a sudden see a bunch of those
like
flying around, right?
Well, and then my brain goes to, are we going to have sky lanes that we have? This is the east going sky lane and this is the west moving sky
Well,
lane. And how are we going
we
to
actually
moderate
have those
that?
already, right? They're already there, and they are separated laterally and vertically, and that's the big difference in flying in aviation. Is we used to call it the big sky theory, right? There is a lot of space, when you get 500 feet or more above the ground. You can divide that up, pretty nicely, right? And we do that now, right? I mean, that's how aircraft are separated, either laterally, vertically, or by time. And so, that's going to, that kind of matrix will start to happen as more and more stuff starts going up into the air.
We would need more like air traffic controller type things to support flying cars and
Well, again, I
small
think that,
electric.
yeah, but I think that's where this current administration is going with this new transformation of our air traffic control system. In other words, we're going to use AI. We're going to use already existing technology to separate aircraft. Other than just a human, right? We have to, because as the skies get more and more congested, there's going to have to be other means to separate aircraft.
Right. Drones, cars, planes.
Where I see it probably happening the most, and I see this, I've been a little bit involved in this up here in Alaska, is cargo delivery, right? Small package. What's really critical up here is getting medicine out to the village. Because right now you have to wait for a manned aircraft to be able to take it to, from one central point out to a village. And, weather or just capacity may prevent that for up to a week or more, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas, I could drop it in a UAS and have it, send it out there, right? When I need to send it. Because that's my, the capacity is there. So those are the kind of concepts that electric aviation vehicles can provide, and solve.
Pretty amazing stuff.
And that was about a 60,000 foot view. There's a lot of detail underneath all that, right?
No, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
That 60,000 foot view. This is our informal, hey,
right.
What's up with the world of aviation today, Mark?
There you go. Well, you probably got more than you bargained for.
It's great. It's great. We love it.
Yeah.
Those are all of our standard questions and pieces of the episode. Really appreciate you being here. And, as I'm sure everyone can tell, I have a ton of respect for you and appreciate everything that I learned from you. And hope that it will continue to pass on to others as I'm coaching other leaders who are moving through the world as well. And please do, if you want to come back, that would be great. If you have other people you think that we should interview, or if you have other topics that you think we should cover in the episode, we'd love to hear it. And we have on our website, we have a form, so anybody who's listening can also share their thoughts and ideas with us. If they have things that they think should be in transportation in the wild, or if they have guest speakers they'd like to hear about. Go online and let us know. We'd love to hear from everyone.
Yeah.
And Mark, we wish you the very best. Stay safe, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful experience with Michael Baker International and whatever your next adventure is going to be, because I firmly believe you're not done yet. I think you're still moving strong.
Thank you. Well, thank you again for inviting me. Yes, I would be happy to join you again. And one person and topic came to mind as you mentioned it, so I'll send that in an email. And
perfect.
Hopefully he'll have the time, because he's pretty engaged right now. But I think it'd be really fascinating to hear from him. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And we're friends now, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. Call me anytime,
great.
Trish. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great to see you both. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday.
You too. Yeah, thank you.